Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I am back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the past 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, your workouts in the gym, supplements you're taking, not taking, considering taking, please feel free to email me your questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can also DM me your questions on Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, so let's get started with this week's No Filter Q&A with question number 1. Nick, what are your thoughts on stand-up desks? Are they worth the purchase, or are they just a fad? There's pros and cons to stand-up desks. So I would say that the majority of clients that I work with that suffer from chronic lower back pain have jobs that require them to sit for most of the day, desk jobs, right? Either they're in meetings, back-to-back meetings, or they're just at their computer all day working. They're sitting for most part of their day. So those are the clients that I notice have they have weaker lower back, so they suffer from chronic lower back pain. My clients who have jobs that are more physical, I have a few guys in construction, for example, no lower back pain whatsoever. And it's because they're moving around all day. They're lifting heavy things, they're bending down, they're standing back up again, they're walking around, so they're moving. So there's something to be said about that. Now, the thing with stand-up desks, though, is that I don't think it's a good idea to have a desk that just is elevated and you have to stand all day, because I think standing in one spot all day is also not good for the lower back, especially the L4, L5 region. I find is if you're standing in one spot all day, that puts a lot of strain on that area. So I prefer those desks that are retractable. They'll go up and down. Those I think are ideal, because you don't want to be sitting all day and you don't want to be standing all day in one spot. So what I recommend to people when it comes to getting a stand-up desk, make sure you get the desk that you can either bring up, retract all the way up, or you can bring back down, so you can alter. Do 1 hour standing, 1 hour seated. But I would not recommend just getting a stand-up desk and standing in one spot all day, because I really don't recommend that for your lower back. Another thing I would recommend to do is, if you do have a job that requires you to sit for most of the day, is get up and move around at least once an hour. Get up for 5 to 10 minutes, go get a glass of water, move around, go to the washroom. If you're stuck in that chair for 4 or 5 hours straight, that's going to wreak havoc on your lower back. So I know it's not ideal, but if you don't have a stand-up desk, get up and move at least once an hour, guys. You don't want to stay in that spot for too long. But as far as standing in one spot, working on a stand-up desk, I wouldn't recommend that. So just make sure you get a desk that, like I said, goes up and down. Okay, they have those desks now with stand-up desks. They no longer make the desk that you just have to, they're elevated desk and you have to stand all day. You can do both. Another thing to do is I'd recommend get a good chair, right? The chair I have right now, this is a really nice chair. My client, who's an interior designer, she actually designed this chair for me. So this really helps with my lower back. It's suited for my weight, my size. Yeah, it's a little pricey, but you know what? It was worth it, because when I'm in the office and I'm working for 2-3 hours, I do get up, but I don't have any problems with my lower back. So I think it's important to get a good chair too. So don't cheap out on chairs. Don't get like an IKEA chair or something if you're going to be working in an office. Spend the money, get a good chair. It's worth it. You only have one lower back. You want to protect it. And lower back pain is a pain in the ass to deal with. It's usually chronic and can cause other issues down the road. So I'm for stand-up desks as long as you're standing and seated throughout the day. Okay, so you're not just standing in one spot for 8 hours. You're not just seated for 8 hours. Okay, move around a little bit. Okay, next question. Nick, do you think personal trainers need to portray themselves living a healthy lifestyle 24/7 in order to remain a professional in their field? No. I mean, okay, so how you portray yourself in person and online, of course, it's important, right? You want to show that you are a professional, that in any field, that you're knowledgeable, that you know yourself, but you also have to have a personal life as well. I don't think it's necessary to show that you're in the gym and you're eating clean 24/7. You're allowed to have a personal life. Whether or not you decide to show that to others, whether that's through social media or in public, that's up to you. For myself personally, I don't mind sharing my personal life with my clients. I was at a Motley Crue concert the other night. I filmed myself there. I had a few drinks. I mean, yeah, I'm living my life. But for the most part, most of my day-to-day activities are looking after my body, looking after my health, living a healthy lifestyle. But that doesn't mean I have to portray it 24/7, because that's not how I live 24/7. There are times where I like to go out. There are times I like to go to a bar. There are times that I'm going to cheat on my diet. And I actually document that on social media as well. So I think people can relate more to their trainers if they say, okay, these people are not robots. They also like to have a good time, but at the same time, they can look up to their trainers and say, but for the most part, they are living an active and fit lifestyle. And this motivates me, it inspires me to go to the gym, and inspires me to eat a clean diet majority of the time. But I don't think that you have to portray yourself as this perfect person who exercises 7 days a week and eats clean 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I don't think that's necessary. No. I think people can relate more to you if you let your guard down a little bit and show yourself and say, look, you know what? I fuck up on my diet sometimes. I do. Yeah, I skip a few training sessions every now and then. It happens. But, for the most part, I stay on track. And I think people will respect that. At the end of the day, it comes down to what you can do to help your clients in the gym and outside of the gym with their diet, in the gym with their training, outside the gym with their diet. If your clients book a workout with you and that's the best workout that they've ever had, and they're like, man, I can't do this on my own. They're gonna book with you whether or not you miss a few workouts yourself or you cheat on your diet. They know you're human, they know you do that, but they know for the most part you're there to support them and hold them accountable for the workouts. So to answer that question, no, I don't think you have to show yourself as a health and fitness expert 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think you can let your guard down a little bit and show that vulnerable side every now and then. People will relate to you more and they'll see you're not a robot and you live your life as well. Okay. But again, if you're in this field, you should know your stuff. You should know your training. You should know your dietary nutrition so you can help your clients and get them to the goals that they want to achieve. All right. Next question. Hey, Nick, can you go into more detail about your cure for preventing a hangover? You briefly mentioned it in your blog from last week. Oh, I don't know if it's a cure for a hangover, but what I had mentioned in the blog that I had put out, I just released it earlier this week on Wednesday. I talked about what I do to try to prevent a hangover from happening. And this is all basic stuff that you can find online, or you talk to other people who they've played around with things that worked, haven't worked. But one of the things that I do is, I always stick to the same drinks throughout the night. So if I go for like gin and soda, that is the drink I will stay with the entire night. I won't do shots. I won't celebrate if I'm at a party with champagne. I'll just stick to that one drink. So I don't mix my alcohol. Another thing I do, I like to stick with low or no sugar alcoholic drinks. So as I mentioned, gin and soda. Gin has very little sugar, if any, inside. And if you put in club soda water with that, there's no sugar in club soda. So that's a great mix, right? And I've talked about this before when you mix, like, let's say your cocktails and they're with your fruity juices or your pop, right? You mix like a rum and Coke, for example. Look how much sugar is in Coke, right? So I wouldn't recommend doing that because I find the sugar actually can cause the hangover as well. So sticking to the same alcoholic beverage throughout the night, that's step one. Sticking with low or no sugar alcoholic beverages, that's two. And the third thing I do, and I do this religiously, whenever I go out and I have a few drinks, when I come home at night, I always have one of my meals before I go to bed. I don't care what time it is, even if I'm not hungry, I force feed myself. So that could be something like salmon brown rice or some lean ground turkey and sweet potatoes, yams, just something with lean protein and carbohydrates, maybe a little bit of healthy fats as well, just to slow down the digestion. And I always drink 2 liters of water before I go to bed. So I force myself to do this. I don't go to McDonald's or A&W or grab a couple slices of pizza because that's only going to make me feel worse. And that's what you see a lot of people do when they go out drinking, right? They go to the pizza place down the street, or they order a couple burgers and fries from McDonald's. And that, to me, like greasy, like food that's full of sugar as well, or fried food, like avoid it. You don't want to add to your hangover. So that's another thing I recommend doing as well. These are all very basic things, but they work. Lastly, and this is, I believe this to be a very common misconception. A lot of people think taking Advil in the morning when you're hungover will help. To an extent, it will. But if you actually go on the Advil website, okay, or Tylenol website, they actually recommend people don't do that. Okay, you want to be very careful with just taking drugs that you don't need to take just because you're feeling hungover. You're not sick, you're hungover. So don't take Advil, don't take Tylenol. Just hydrate really, really well. As I mentioned, I drink 2 liters of water before I go to bed after a night of drinking. You don't have to drink that much, but if you force yourself to eat, force yourself to drink, I promise you're going to feel way better in the morning. Stick to the same alcoholic beverage throughout the night. Keep that alcoholic beverage low in sugar, okay? And that should make a huge difference how you feel the next day. All right, next question. Oh, this kind of relates to that question. Hi, Nick. How was the Motley Crue concert? Fucking amazing. It was amazing. Probably one of the best concerts I've ever seen. So it was the stadium tour and it had 4 acts. Joan Jett was opening at the beginning of the show, started at 4 o'clock. So she went on at 4. Then Poison followed up around 5:30. Poison was on for about an hour. And then around 7, Def Leppard came on. Def Leppard was amazing. In my opinion, Def Leppard was probably the best act of the night, honestly. And they were on for, I would say, probably about close to 2 hours. And then Motley Crue came on around 9:30, and they were on for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Motley Crue was great. As I said, I thought Def Leppard stole the show, though. Def Leppard is one of my favorite bands, but from the entire night, I think they put on the best show. Joan Jett, always awesome. This is the second time I've seen her, but she was really good. And I mean, I'm not a huge Joan Jett fan, but she was really good. I loved her. I watched her entire set. And then Poison came on. I'm not a big Poison fan. Bret Michaels, I like some of their stuff, but I didn't really stay and watch that. I went to the concession stand when they were on, and I saw a few of their songs, but again, nothing against them. It's just that's not my type of music. And then Def Leppard, as I mentioned, was amazing. They played some of their greatest hits. I stayed for the entire set of that. And then when Motley Crue came on, of course, Motley Crue, one of my favorite bands, I stayed for that, and they were really good. I was really impressed with Vince Neil. I know he got a lot of bad reps from people commenting on the show on the stadium tour this summer that he wasn't very good. He's put on some weight. Singing is atrocious, and he got some pretty bad reviews. But I thought he did a pretty good job. I mean, you have to remember, I think Vince Neil's like 61 or 62 now. So yeah, he's aged, but they're still out there putting on a show. So I thought overall it was a good show. I would definitely see it again if they all came together and did another show, another tour, and maybe that'll happen next summer. But if you haven't seen the tour, I think it's wrapping up now. I think they're in Edmonton on Sunday. So if you're in Edmonton, you might want to grab some seats last minute. But yeah, I think the stadium tour wraps up this week. So great tour. I would definitely see it again. If they happen to tour again next summer, I would definitely recommend getting tickets to the tour. It's definitely worth seeing. Okay, next question. Hey, Nick, can you go into more detail? Oh, sorry, I read that question. Next question, sorry. Hi, Nick. Are Hex Bar Deadlifts better than regular bar deadlifts, or are they the same thing? They are not the same thing. And if you follow my Instagram stories, you'll see I actually don't have any of my clients doing straight barbell deadlifts. I'm really not a big fan in using that exercise. I find it actually has more risks than benefits. So what I like doing with the Hex Bar with clients is I find that the way the weight's distributed with the Hex Bar is way more effective than a straight barbell. First of all, when you're using a straight barbell, most people make the mistake, especially as they get tired, they round their shoulders, they round their back. And what happens when you fatigue, it's very easy to cheat on an exercise. And that, of course, puts the lumbar region in risk of injury, right? Rounding your shoulders, rounding your back when you lift a heavy weight off the floor. The nice thing with using a Hex Bar, the weight's distributed on the side as opposed to the front. So when you bend over, you really can't cheat. It keeps the exercise a lot more strict. And I noticed for a lot of people, they have to go a lot lighter when they're doing Hex Bar deadlifts versus regular barbell deadlifts. But again, that's just because the weight's distributed differently. And because the weight is on the side, like the bumper plates are on the side as opposed to the front, because the barbell, a straight barbell is in front of you, whereas the Hex Bar deadlift, you're actually in the Hex Bar. So the weight's distributed more on the side. You're more likely to use more glutes and hamstrings in that lift. So as you come up, you can't help but keep your back straight the entire way, just because the way the weight's distributed. So I find Hex Bar deadlifts to be way more effective than straight barbell deadlifts. And those are the type of deadlifts that I do with my clients. I'm not saying don't do straight bar deadlifts, but I personally don't do them, and I don't have any of my clients do them for the main reason that over the years, when I've worked with people and I've seen them come work with me and they suffer from lower back injury, a lot of times they'll tell me, they used to do deadlifts or heavy-weighted barbell squats or front squats combined with deadlifts. So when I tweak the program a little bit, I take out the straight bar deadlifts, throw in the Hex Bar deadlifts. They have to go drop their weight sometimes in half, 50%. but it takes a lot of strain off that lower back and it allows you to lift more of your glutes and hamstrings. You'll still get great lower back development from doing hex bar deadlifts, but it really allows you to engage the glutes and fire through the glutes and hamstrings at the same time. In my opinion, that's the best way to do a deadlift because I like to focus on engaging both the glutes and the hamstrings when performing a movement off the floor. A big problem I have, a lot of people come work with me, is they can't fire through their glutes. If I get them to do a few weeks of hex bar deadlifts, they learn very quickly how to fire through their glutes. So when they're doing exercises like barbell back squats, they're able to engage those muscles more. So I recommend, if you have the option of doing hex bar deadlifts versus straight barbell deadlifts, my recommendation would be to do the hex bar deadlifts, just because I feel you'll get more out of them. Yes, you're going to have to drop your weight. I promise you, you're not going to be able to lift the same amount of weight that you were before because the weight's distributed differently. But I feel that you're going to get more out of the exercise and there's a lesser risk for injury. Okay, next question. Nick, do you need to eat before exercising in the morning? I train around 7 a.m. and the thought of eating before I train that early makes me nauseous. No, you don't have to eat before you train. This is something I've talked about quite a few times. So I've always been one of those trainers that I ask my clients, how do you feel with food in your stomach versus food not in your stomach? And again, this depends on the individual I'm working with, depends on their metabolism, how fast they digest the food, and also the time of day they train. So I would say that the majority of people that I work with from 6 a.m. to about 9 a.m. don't eat before they see me. And that's just because they feel very, like this person, nauseous when they train, they feel sluggish, a little bit fatigued as they're doing their lifts. And I say, well, you know what? You don't need to eat. And then they'll try to work out in the morning without the food and they work out way better, right? So I think there's a common misconception out there that says you have to eat before you train. I don't agree with that. I think if you're someone who wakes up at say 6 or 7 in the morning and then you train later in the day at say 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah, you probably want to eat something around 10 in the morning, a few hours before you train. But if you're someone who, you wake up at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and you train at 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, no, I don't think it's necessary to eat. I do think, however, it's important to hydrate. So what I would recommend for someone who is coming into the gym in a fasted state, as in there's no food in their system in the morning, what I recommend is get up in the morning and have 2 or 3 cups of water before you come to the gym. So at least your muscles are hydrated. Then you stop any risk of potential injury. So that's what I'd recommend if you're going to train in a fasted state, and then obviously sipping on water throughout the workout will help as well. And then what I'd recommend is post-workout, try to get that post-workout meal or shake, whatever you want, within at least a 2-hour window. It doesn't have to be immediate. There's no science that backs that. So you don't have to just chug down a post-workout shake as soon as you finish your workout. That's bro science. Do what works best for yourself, but just what I recommend is make sure you get that meal or that shake within a 2-hour period, because then your body won't go into a catabolic state. Okay. But I don't think it's necessary to eat pre-workout, especially if you're someone who works out at 6 or 7 in the morning. Absolutely not. Myself personally, I haven't been able to work out at that time for years. I don't have the luxury of working out at 7 a.m. in the morning. I'd love to do that, but I'm usually in classes or I have private sessions at that time. So in the past, though, I used to love training that time in the morning. I used to train at 6 a.m. before I became a trainer, and I never ate before I worked out ever at that time, and my workouts were great. So play around and see how you feel. Do you train better with food in your system versus no food in your system? I mentioned this a few weeks ago as well. I have some clients who have a very small portion of food before they come in. So I'll have some of my guys do maybe 1/3 of a cup of oats, which isn't very much for like a big guy who's 180, 200 pounds. That's not very much food at all. But just that little bit of carbohydrates just gets them going, right? Replenishes the glycogen storage. So see how you feel, how you operate. Was that workout better in a fasted state, or was it better when you had a meal? Or maybe you just need a small little bit of food before you come in. Maybe you just need a shake. Maybe you just need some protein in you before you come in. So I would say play around with it and find the formula that works best for you. But don't just fall into the common stigma that you have to eat before you train, because again, that's bro science. There's no truth to that. And there's no science behind that, backing that claim. You have to do what works for you. All right. Next question. Nick, how do you advise your clients to exercise while they are experiencing DOMS? Do you tell them to just take a few rest days until they are no longer sore? Okay, so for those people that don't know, DOMS, D-O-M-S, stands for delayed onset muscle soreness. For my clients who experience DOMS, This is what I do, because for anyone who experiences DOMS, you should be following a training split. So you should not be going to the gym doing the same workout every day. That's ridiculous. Nor should you be doing, let's say you're in the gym 6 days a week and you're following a 3-day split where you're doing chest and back day 1, shoulders and arms day 2, and legs day 3, and then you repeat that again before the week ends. That to me, again, is ridiculous. You're asking for injury. If you really train a muscle hard, then you know it's going to be sore. Like when I do my chest workout, my chest is sore for 4 to 5 days. So for me to hit my chest twice in 1 week, that would just be stupid. I'm going to risk injury. So I don't have any clients train the muscle group that's sore at the same period of time throughout the week. So for example, if I work with someone who's working with me 6 days a week, I'll design a split where they'll be doing, let's say, chest day 1, back day 2, shoulders day 3, bis and tris day 4, quads day 5, hamstrings, glutes, calves, abs day 6. So they're never, even though, let's say their chest is sore, well, the next day we're working back. And then after that, okay, their back is sore, but the next day we're working shoulders. And after that, their shoulders are sore, but the next day we're working arms. So there's never that risk of training that muscle group that's super sore. That doesn't happen. So I would look at your training split first and make sure that you're not doing the same muscle groups 2 or 3 times a week, right? And also how you program your training split is crucial. I wouldn't recommend doing chest day 1 and shoulders day 2, because when you do your chest workout, you are using your anterior and your medial deltoids to help with your pressing movements. So by putting back the day after chest, now you're working your antagonist and agonist muscle groups on back-to-back days. So you're giving those pushing muscles, those pressing muscles a break, and now you're working your pulling muscles. And then your day 3, you can go into doing shoulders. Then give your shoulders a break and do your bis and tris. Then give your arms a break and do your lower body, right? So that's the way I would design a 6-day training split. If you're in the gym 3 days a week, again, it depends on how you're programming your muscle groups together. That's one of the things that I do with a lot of my clients who work with me online. I say, okay, how many days can you realistically train the gym? For most people, they can usually go anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Okay, so let's design a split based around 3 to 5 days. But rarely, if ever, am I going to have someone train the same muscle group twice in a week. That doesn't happen. So yes, people experience DOMS, but no, it doesn't affect the workouts because of the way that we implement the muscle groups throughout the week into their training split. All right. Next question. Hi, Nick. How accurate is the Tanita body composition scale? I'm thinking of purchasing one. Garbage. Garbage, garbage, garbage. Body composition scales in general, in my opinion, garbage. So just like the BMI, garbage. I remember stepping on the Tanita scale back in, I think it was 2010. I was getting ready for a bodybuilding show and I was 3 days out. My body fat was so low that it hurt when I walked. That's how low my body fat was. I don't know what it was at, but it was incredibly low. I could see veins in my midsection. That's how low it was. And I jumped on that scale. I think I was at a fitness world at the time. I can't remember. I was at a commercial gym. I was just training. They had one of those Tanita scales there. I jumped on it and it read based on my weight and my height that my body fat percentage. Remember, I have veins sticking in my abs at this point, but my body fat percentage based on my weight and my height was sitting at around 18%. So I don't recommend using these body composition scales for those people who are exercising with weights and also doing cardiovascular activity on top of that. Okay. Today at this point, I'm sitting at 210 pounds and I'm 5'10". So according to the BMI, I'm nearing that scale of obese. Oh, no, I don't think I'm obese at all. I think I'm in fairly good shape. So you have to be careful using those body composition scales. Do they work for the average person who doesn't really work out with weights? Yeah, probably. They're fairly accurate for those types of people. But for those of us who do resistance training 5-6 days a week, we have lean muscle mass. No, they're garbage. They don't work at all. They're one of those generic one-size-fits-all copy-paste bullshit scales. Even when it comes to weighing yourself on a regular scale, I'll use that with my clients for their weekly check-ins, but I just use it as a guide, just so I can see, okay, how are they fluctuating? How is their weight fluctuating? But I don't base my changes on the weight on the scale. I base it on how they look and how they feel. That's more important to me. So do I think the Tanita scale is worth purchasing? Again, personally, no, I don't. If you feel it's going to hold you accountable, just like the Fitbit watches and stuff like that, sure, get it. I just don't think they're that accurate when it comes to people who have lean muscle mass like myself or the people I work with. I don't think they're accurate at all, and I think they're a waste of money. Okay. Next question. Nick, why do so many people credit the carnivore diet to being so successful for weight loss? Have you tried it, and would you recommend trying it for someone trying to lose weight? So the thing with the carnivore diet, it does reduce inflammation. There's been studies that show that it can reduce the symptoms of diabetes as well. But would I go on it personally? No. I feel it's too restrictive. Again, I don't like these diets like keto or the carnivore diet that restricts certain macronutrients, intermittent fasting that restrict calories and macronutrients at certain times of the day. I don't like diets that restrict too much. And the problem with diets like the carnivore diet, if you've ever followed the carnivore diet or if you look into it, it also restricts things like vegetables, right? Greens. So I personally don't like diets like that. Now, the reason why this diet works really well for a lot of people is that most people who switch over to the carnivore diet, they're following a diet plan that usually has a lot of simple carbohydrates, a lot of sugary carbohydrates. And when they switch over to the carnivore diet, now they start losing weight because essentially with the carnivore diet, there's very little, if any, carbs in there whatsoever. But the main thing is they're not eating those bad sources of carbohydrates anymore. So what I recommend is following a balanced diet that has a good source of lean proteins, a good source of complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats. The complex carbohydrates is what I feel a lot of people lack in their diet. People think carbs are the enemy, but that's because they're having a lot of white pasta, white rice, white potatoes, and they'll have a lot of bread. And that stuff right there is not good for your diet, in any diet. But if you switch those carbs over to brown rice, quinoa, yams, sweet potato, oatmeal, cream of rice, those type of carbohydrates are actually good for you, and they're actually going to help you build muscle and lose fat. So I don't like taking out any macronutrients from any diet plan. Now, I'm not saying don't do the carnivore diet, but if you're asking me personally if I would do it or if I would put a client on it, no, I wouldn't. Because as I mentioned, I find it's too restrictive. I find it takes out a lot of essential nutrients. As I mentioned, no vegetables allowed on that diet. There's a lot of other things that are not on that diet. And I also think eating that many meat sources throughout your day is very hard on your digestive system. I mean, yeah, you can fluctuate your meat sources, as you can do red meat, you can do fish, you can do chicken, for sure. You can do that. You can do eggs. But at the same time, I mean, I feel it's too restrictive, and I feel you're losing a lot of essential nutrients when following a diet plan like that. So again, when it comes to these diets, especially these fad diets, I advise people to stay away from them. Really just try to follow a healthy, balanced diet that is less restrictive and more sustainable, easily sustainable, that you can do from day-to-day life. Because in the long run, you might not get the results as quickly as you would following a carnivore diet, but you will get the results as long as you are consistent with that type of diet plan, I promise you. And best of all, it's easier to keep the fat off and the muscle on when you're following a diet that is realistic to follow, right? Not a diet that is like too extreme, and yeah, you can follow it for 30 days and you'll lose 20 pounds, but as soon as you jump off that diet, guess what happens? The weight comes back on and more. So don't do any of these diets that are going to affect your thyroid or have an impact on your metabolism. I would not recommend following these short-term diet plans. They will get you results. Any diet will work. I've mentioned this before, but if it's not sustainable, guys, it's not going to be successful. All right. Last question. Okay. Nick, I saw an old photo of The Rock from when he first started wrestling, and he looked a little softer and chubbier than he does now. Is this because he changed his training style? I'm surprised he looks better now as this photo was taken as he's 30 years older. Sorry, as he's 30 years older. The Rock looks great, right? The Rock looks incredible. Now, I would never say that The Rock was fat. I have seen photos of The Rock when he was in his early 20s, when he played football, and then when he first started wrestling. He was a little softer for sure. He wasn't nearly as defined or hard as he is today. And I think there's a few factors for that. Again, I don't train The Rock, so I can't comment on his training style, but I believe from seeing what he does, his workouts on Instagram, his diet plan, he's following a bodybuilder type diet right now. He's following a bodybuilding type training split from what I've seen. So I think because he's following that type of training style, that type of diet, he's getting the results that he has now. supplementation has probably changed over the years as well, right? I mean, as The Rock has gotten older, like we're comparing photos from 30 years ago, he also has some muscle maturity. Because even when he was in his early 20s or in his teens, he was still lifting weights. I mean, you could see he was a big guy when he played football. So obviously he lifted weights. But now that his sport's changed, his goals have changed. So I imagine, why not has his body changed as well, right? There's something to be said about muscle maturity, and The Rock definitely has it. He's been training for 30 plus years, probably longer. I mean, I think he's 50 years old now. So I think he's been training since he was 15 years old. So there's 35 years in the gym, right? So that muscle maturity is there. That hard, dense muscle is there. When he was a wrestler, I imagine it wasn't all about aesthetics. It was just get big, get strong. And that comes back down to a lot of powerlifting training too. Same with football, get big, get strong, right? So low repetitions, just as many calories as you can get in, doesn't matter if they're clean or dirty. I imagine now that he's older, and a lot of the movie roles that he gets are based on his aesthetics as well. He's got to look lean, he's got to look ripped, he's got to look hard and dense. He's going to follow a more clean, caloric nutritional plan, right? He's not going to just follow the seafood diet, which is seafood, eat it, which a lot of these guys who are just big and thick, and they look like what I call the Michelin man, they have that marshmallow look to them. They're just big, they're strong, they're really strong in the gym, but they don't have any really defined muscle bellies. So that has a lot to do with, yes, the way that you train and the way that you eat. The supplementation, I would say, would be a third component to that. But the main thing is, if you're training hard, heavy, and I've said this before, keeping your reps in double digits, I try to keep my clients between 10 to 15, sometimes even 20 reps, depending on the exercise and the muscle group we're working. Lots of supersets, lots of drop sets, a few circuits. I find that's the best way to create that hard, lean, dense muscle. Making sure you're doing your cardiovascular activity as well, 3 to 4 times a week, 20, 30-minute sessions. That's going to help as well keep the body fat low. So I can't comment for sure as to what I know The Rock is doing now, but I imagine his training has evolved over the last 30 years. And with that, as has his diet and has the supplementation. There's no reason why somebody can't look better in their 40s and 50s than they did in their 20s and 30s. Why not? We see this all the time, right? Especially for people who have been consistent with weight training in their 20s and 30s, and maybe they just changed up the way they approach their workouts. Once they get to their 40s, they're training a little bit more methodically. They're thinking about their workouts. They're thinking, okay, how can I avoid injury? I don't need to lift as heavy anymore, but I still want to make sure that I'm getting results. So I want to get the best out of my workouts. As we get older, we do mature. So there's something to be said about that too, right? Like the way you approach your workouts, you might be a little bit more like, okay, this is bothering me today, so I'm going to do this instead, right? So I think that has a lot to do with it too. I think The Rock is a lot smarter than he used to be. Just like anyone who's been training, I'm a lot smarter now in my late 30s than I was in my late 20s with the way I approach my workouts, and I still feel like I'm getting great results. So that's why I think The Rock has changed his physique. It's a combination of training style, dietary nutrition, and supplement protocol. All right, guys, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode should be going up on Monday afternoon. Just as a reminder, if you do have any questions related to your diet, training, or supplementation, please feel free to email me at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can also DM me your questions at @fitcosgrove_. Appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.